Here with us now, Princeton University political scientist, former Republican staffer and NewsNation political contributor, Dr. Lauren Wright, and former Hartford, Connecticut mayor and delegate to the Democratic National Convention, Luke Bronin. Good morning to both of you. Happy Sunday. Luke, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s Senate confirmation hearings are scheduled for Wednesday and Thursday. I mentioned the opposition he will likely face from Democrats in this hearing. What questions would you want answered?
Well, first of all, you also said opposition from some medical experts. I don't know that there are any medical experts who don't oppose this nomination. I mean, the fact that we're even having this conversation just shows how much we've gone through the looking glass. You know, we're in an upside down world here. If you'd asked Republican members of Congress before RFK got out of the race and endorsed Trump, do they want to see this guy as HHS? You would have overwhelmingly, gotten laughed at. This is somebody who has questioned whether HIV causes AIDS. This is somebody who has promoted some of the wildest anti-vaccine conspiracy theories out there, not just about COVID, but about measles, mumps, rubella, polio vaccines. So I think he's going to face a lot of intense questioning. The question is, how complete is the Republican Senate capitulation going to be? We saw them approve Pete Hegseth, who was completely unqualified for the job of Secretary of Defense. We'll see whether there are senators in the Republican caucus who are willing to stand up and say, no way, we're not going to play political games with America's health.
Luke, I should mention we've had some doctors on this network who do support this nomination. We have had a few, I should mention. Lauren, how would you advise Kennedy in addressing his previous comments about vaccines?
To be the more normal version of RFK, which does exist. When he's at his best, he raises reasonable questions about COVID lockdown policies and school closures that lasted more than a year, and about some of the more controversial restrictions that had huge negative impacts on our kids and our economy. When he's at its worst, yes, he has these conspiracy theories that he's tried to sort of backpedal on, and he can be very convincing about that. But of course, all of those questions that Luke brought up are very fair, and I hope, each questioner will stick to those rather than his personal conduct, because I think that's sort of where Democrats went wrong with Hegseth's nomination. Not that he's not a controversial person and character is not important, but there's just no appetite right now among Americans for these sorts of back and forths. They want to know about the policies and what's your track record for managing an organization and for dealing with these policies.
Do you see bipartisan support, Lauren, for RFK this week?
I do. I mean, I don't know what will ultimately happen, but, he did used to be a Democrat a very, very short time ago. And his first choice, according to a lot of reporting, was to hop on the Harris campaign rather than the Trump campaign. And then he really backpedaled and he said he's not for all this censorship, and he felt silenced, and then Trump really embraced him. So he's been on both sides of the aisle very recently, Henna.
Let's move on to TikTok, guys. Lauren, I will start with you on this one, too. Trump has said he will save TikTok. We know he's a businessman. How important is it for him politically, considering a few months ago he was totally against TikTok? But how important is it for him to close this deal?
It's important, but he also has pretty limited capacity to do so. It's true what he says, that the U.S. government has a tremendous role to play because almost 200 million Americans use this technology. But it's also true that Republicans have been the main people concerned with some of China's influence attempts, the security protocols surrounding the apps. And there has been pushback among Republicans against Trump's various policies. I think we saw that just now with the Hegseth nomination. And so TikTok's another area where he doesn't have his party in lockstep. There is some very serious debate on this topic.
Yeah, Luke, your thoughts, again, considering this is a complete turnaround from what the president was saying a few months ago about the social media app.
Yeah, no, I think it's important to start where Lauren did, which is that Donald Trump was against TikTok before he was for it. But I think there's lots of questions here. This isn't just going to be about Donald Trump getting on the phone and putting together a deal. As I understand it, the Chinese government is going to have to approve this sale. Chinese regulators are going to have to approve this sale. And what kind of leverage does that give them in other negotiations with Trump? I think Trump has put himself in a position where he's made clear that he wants to be the savior of TikTok. He wants to be seen as the savior of TikTok. That gives some leverage to the other side. That gives some leverage to the Chinese in these negotiations. So let's see what happens as this plays out. The other thing is, it's one thing if the U.S. government, the Trump administration, are trying to put a deal together that they think makes sense for America. And as they look at various potential buyers, they look at their financial capacity and their technological capacity. It's another thing if Donald Trump tries to steer this to somebody who he sees as a political ally. And I think we should all be keeping an eye out for that.
Speaking of political allies, Luke, I'm running out of time, but I want to get this question in. We've seen tech giants Mark Zuckerberg, Larry Ellison, Tim Cook work and meet with Trump in the past few weeks. A lot of them were at the inauguration. Do you think we will see social media platforms move more right under this current administration?
I think you've already begun to see that. And there's no question that some of the owners of these big platforms have been trying to curry favor with the Trump administration. I know there have been questions raised in recent days about some content moderation that seems to lean right. So it's entirely possible.
Luke Bronin, Lauren Wright, always great to have you guys on this show. Thank you again. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday.